We're going to start off with a Q&A with Daniel Mastrorillo. Daniel's a software engineer at Atlassian, and he also runs a small business in tech mentorship. And we've been lucky enough to have him as a mentor for this cohort as they built their final project. So he's going to have a chat with Adam, and we'll hear about his experience in mentoring people in technology, his opinion on Holberton, and also his experience with this cohort here. Without further ado, I'll get Adam and Daniel to come up here.
We're going to do a little Q&A here, but just a bit of an intro to myself. So I'm the admissions manager at Holberton. So I'm helping the students on that non-technical side of things. So I do a little bit of career coaching, helping them optimize their LinkedIn, and really doing everything from that non-technical level to make sure that their journey is as good as it can possibly be. So before further ado, I'll introduce Daniel. So Daniel is a front-end software engineer at Atlassian. He's also a volunteer CTO for the Australian Birth Trauma Association. Yes. And more recently, he's a tech mentor for aspiring software engineers. So he's actually joining us from the Gold Coast. He flew down today, and it's actually the first time he's been in Melbourne. So could we give him a warm welcome? So I've given a little bit of a background into your story, Daniel, but it's your story and no one tells it better than yourself. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Adam. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm 27-year-old. I'm a software engineer for Atlassian. I'm also a contracted tech lead and senior full-stack engineer for a company called Mighty Minds up in Queensland. They service the schools up there. We develop a learning management platform for them. Volunteer CTO for Raptor, and more recently, a tech mentor for aspiring software engineers, guiding them into breaking into the tech industry. So I started my coding journey actually when I was 15 through the popular Minecraft game that most of you probably have heard. I wanted to add some functionality to it, and I stumbled upon a YouTube tutorial that taught me how to build a plugin in Java. And after I wrote my first little bit of functioning code, I was completely hooked. From there, I went on to develop my own budgeting app. I ended up starting up my own little business as a front-end engineer. I then founded a company with an old friend of mine, and we landed a contract for the New South Wales government where we developed a bespoke application for their park rangers so that they could manage the patrons of one of their state parks up in northern New South Wales. So from there, after the birth of my daughter, wanted a little bit more stability in my life, not something that you can get from a company. I landed my first job as a front-end engineer for a company called Mighty Minds, as I mentioned earlier, and that was my first full-time role as an employee. That was back in April of 2021. And then by April 2022, I was recruited by Atlassian and starting my first day with them. So here I am.
That's a lot happening before the age of 27. I don't know how he's managed to fit in a company, having a kid, starting 2 full-time jobs. So props to you, Daniel. And more recently, you've obviously started this tech mentoring business. So do you want to just expand a little about the why you started this business, as well as the services you actually provide?
I actually started mentoring. I was recruited by someone in my professional network through the Digital Jobs Program, which was an initiative of the Victorian government. And it was just meant to be a 3-month course at the start of this year. A group of 5 people, I was tasked with just helping see them through their transition into tech. And I remember by the end of the 3rd month, I was so invested in their journey, so taken away by how they were transitioning into tech, and so inspired that I actually offered up mentoring after the program had ended, just out of my own spare time, just because I wanted to see kind of like where it led. And so fast forward maybe 2 or 3 months, one of the people that was from the Digital Jobs Program actually said, I value your time so much, like, why aren't you charging for this? Everything clicked, and I was like, yeah, like, this could easily be like a job venture. And so that's kind of like how it started. But the kind of services that I offer, I like to offer like a very hands-off approach kind of mentoring. I think a very important skill for software engineers is problem solving. I don't like to go into my mentoring sessions and tell my mentees what to do or how to code or how to solve problems. I kind of like to learn about their kind of style, where they're from, their background, their passions, what motivates them to transition into tech, because I found that a lot of it kind of reminds me of what it was like for me when I went through into tech through a non-traditional route as well, because I didn't go through university. And so once I understand what motivates them, I get an understanding of their obstacles and challenges that they face, their wins and achievements. I act as like a support person for them, just guiding them through just that kind of extra backup. You're on the right track. Here's some tips. Maybe you should look into that. Here are some additional resources. And I found that I have a wealth of knowledge in that kind of area, transitioning into tech through a non-traditional background. But a lot of the mentees have gotten a lot of valuable feedback and valuable insights from it. That's kind of why I do what I do.
It's absolutely brilliant. And you can see the passion in the way that he talks about it. So it's not often that someone finds what they want to do at the age of 15, goes through it, becomes successful, and then starts a side hustle in it. So he's doing awesome. More recently, obviously, he's been mentoring this cohort that's right here for the last 3 months. So you started off mentoring them all one-on-one finding out a bit about their aspirations, figuring out their goals, and then helping them towards, I guess, what they want to do next. And then you moved into helping them group by group. And when you were doing that, you were helping steer the direction of their project and overcoming those obstacles. Do you want to just talk a bit about what one of those one-on-one sessions sounds like, and maybe even those group sessions as well?
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much with the one-on-one session, it was very much around understanding, as I said before, like what was it that was motivating these people to transition into tech. A lot of them came from very successful careers in the nursing space, in the scientific space. So it's a big life change having such a successful career and, almost starting all over again. So I was really adamant on finding out what's driving this, what's the purpose of this change, what's motivating them. And again, as I mentioned before, it was quite inspiring to hear their stories. And so then I was about deep diving and kind of understanding, all right, like, you guys are transitioning into tech. It's almost like you guys are starting from start again. What obstacles, what are your fears, what are your concerns? And kind of like going into depth with all of them and understanding exactly where they're at and what kind of support they needed moving forward. And then once I had established that, it was around understanding where they wanted to end up. Right, because there's a lot of different branches of tech. I had a few people that wanted to get into gaming. I wanted a few people that wanted to get into front end, back end, analytics, all that kind of stuff. So really helping them tailor their Holberton experience around developing the skills that they would need to be able to achieve pretty much the careers that they were dreaming to achieve. So that was kind of the one-on-one. When we then moved into a group setting for the two projects, I think that was really, really interesting. You kind of saw them all naturally fall into their roles based on their previous careers and the skill set that they had learned from their previous careers. They all kind of like naturally fell into their roles and they all started like really upping their skills, their communication, their problem solving, their decision making, all that kind of stuff. And that was really, really inspiring, kind of just see them naturally fall into this role that was, as of like 5 months ago, completely new to them. So that was really cool. I can't take the credit for steering the direction of their project. They did absolutely amazing tech-wise. I had very little to do with any of that. My support there was more around kind of understanding where they wanted their project to go and giving them additional resources, things that they could study up on, and additional guidance, tips, maybe a nudge in the right direction if they felt a bit lost. But for the most part, they did absolutely, absolutely amazing.
They're super thankful for everything you've done. I've been lucky enough to have the first-hand experience of that, and I can see how much of a massive value it is for the students. So thank you so much for the last 3 months guiding them. Just as far as obviously this bunch here, they're all quite unique in their background. So they're actually career changers, and all the students we have here at Holberton are career changers. So you've obviously mentored a diverse range of backgrounds in your experience. Do you want to just shed some light on the different type of personalities, traits we've got here with our career changers, maybe against uni grads or self-taught engineers like yourself?
I think the biggest difference that I noticed straight away from the cohort as opposed to the people that I mentor outside of Holberton was they had a really solid foundation, really solid fundamentals. The intense, I guess, initial 3 months where they kind of got drilled with like a variety of different languages really helped set that groundwork, understanding how a computer understands code, processes code, and how like a line of code then influences how an application acts. So I think that was really, really good, and it set some really solid groundwork. And then when they came together to then build a project all the way from ideation to MVP, things like creating a user journey, figuring out the user persona that they wanted to sell or market to, all the way to discovering their tech stack, understanding how all these systems were going to piece together to form their MVP. I think that, along with the groundwork, as I mentioned before, upskilling, their communication, project management, decision making, and all that kind of stuff, really developed a group of people that I would no longer consider entry-level or junior engineers. So that was really inspiring. I've mentored a lot of people for several months, and the self-taught, but even the people that come out of university, they might have a lot more of that technical know-how, but I felt that the cohort from Holberton was just a level beyond junior engineer, which is insane because they've only been doing it for 9 months and they've come from completely different careers. So that was impressive.
It's great feedback, and these guys are really great. So thank you for being so positive about that. So obviously, Daniel, I'd love to talk to you all day, but it's not about us today. It's about these guys. So just before we pass it on, do you want to just share something that you were really impressed about by both of the group's projects without giving too much away, of course?
So first of all, I want to start with saying that I was absolutely blown away by these two groups. I've been engineering for quite some time, and the level of tech knowledge and just problem solving ideas they came up with and tackled was really impressive. How they dived deep into their code, understood it, made it work, made it function. It's extremely impressive. I'm not going to talk about the applications because that's for them to do. They've got a whole presentation set up. I'm not going to steal away from that, but I did want to talk about something that really blew my mind about how they went about their project. So from the Tulip group, the dating app, I was absolutely blown away. They decided to do the authentication system completely manually without going through a third party. All right, now Not sure how many of you know how authentication works, but it is a huge project of its own. Security, data protection, privacy, confidentiality, all of that ties into it. And there's a lot of libraries that allow you to do that because it's such a difficult concept to grasp. And this is what I was talking about, not junior engineers. They've decided to, not only did they have the idea to do the authentication, they actually decided to go through with that idea, which to me was already crazy. And then they succeeded as well, which was absolutely insane. I was absolutely blown away by that. GiddyUp, on the other hand, I was absolutely astonished by how they set up their project. So a really big point of friction for creating an application is how the front end and the back end teams communicate, all right? There's two completely different systems and they need to work together to form an application. The way they use this application called Postman, which allows you to document the backend, provide it to the front-end engineers so that they can test the backend, they can understand the kind of response that they're going to get back from each request that they make. And you can also add your own testing suite to Postman to make sure that the backend is performing as it's meant to. Again, this isn't junior engineer stuff, all right? You would expect this from a senior engineer when he's setting up the project. And I remember coming into one of the mentoring sessions and yeah, I think Catherine was like just going through Postman and it was all set up perfectly and all the requests were there and all the testing was there. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I was absolutely blown away by that as well. And so again, yeah, I just need to reiterate, this is not stuff you see at a junior engineer level. Okay, this is stuff that you see beyond that, even in some cases at a senior engineering level. So absolutely blown away by these guys.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm super excited. So from here on out, we'll pass it over to these guys, but Daniel, thank you once again for flying down to Melbourne for this. I hope you can enjoy it and I hope we get some sunshine back so we can feel like home. And anyone here that's looking for a tech mentor, please reach out to Daniel. As you can see, he's brilliant and he's helped these guys so much. So don't be shy. He's very approachable. Thank you very much. I'll pass it back to you, Jed.
See you.